Rabbi, academic, philanthropist Dr. Yosef Wosk is an independent thinker and creative educator with a stack of accomplishments and a big heart that fuels his passions, one of which is SFU's Philosophers Café. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Yosef Wosk, Director of Interdisciplinary Programs and Continuing Studies at Simon Fraser University, back to Studio 4 to tell us more. Nice to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The Philosophers Café, a wise notion 10 years ago?
Yes, we started, when we developed some programs at the university, and we are at the downtown campus, which I think influenced us in our programming too. The programming we had was the traditional, here's the building, kind of the edifice complex. Mm-hmm. People come to the building, you have a lecture, you sit, you listen, you digest, you go out. Even if there was a discussion afterwards, there was still a hierarchy of the presenter and the people who wanted to engage in some type of conversation. I remember at the end of one of these programs feeling somewhat empty. There had been a wonderful presentation, but there had not been any authentic dialogue, conversation, encounter. And so I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could somehow leave the building and go to the street, go to the people instead of bringing the people into the building. And we started in Gastown, which was just down the block. I had the good fortune of studying in a number of other cities outside of Vancouver, which maybe opened my vision to other things that were possible. And one of those places was New York and in Greenwich Village. And so I thought, what's the closest thing to Greenwich Village? And having an authentic conversation was Gastown. And we developed the conversations there. I remember the first, Stan Persky was our first moderator. Mm-hmm. The first few sessions, it was almost a revolution. We had so many people coming in at the doors. It was new for Vancouver. That was 10 years ago. We started one cafe, and I thought that would be enough. But over time, I saw there was a hunger for it. And instead of just doing one cafe for the entire city, we eventually now have 25 different locations, both in Vancouver and in the Okanagan and in Victoria and Nanaimo and the Gulf Islands, and we've helped other places across Canada start up cafes.
And in these turbulent times, as Paul Ehrlich pointed out, dialogue, social innovation is so important. What better way to have it than people gathering, pondering? What happens after the cafe? It's great to sit down and ponder a question, a deep question. Are they always deep questions?
see, that would be a good topic. No, we speak about humor. That we speak about, even if you want to say, what is a deep topic? Why should we be interested in deep topics? And what if you're just taking a slice of life? Can't you take almost like a hologram, where you can take any one molecule of the larger picture and analyze that, and within that you've got the picture of the macrocosm of everything that it contains. So it's not a matter of being highbrow or lowbrow, or this is deep or this is ridiculous. Everything is up for conversation. And Vancouver, British Columbia, maybe because the Philosophers Café has helped to stimulate this, but we have become one of the premier conversation capitals of the world.
Well, the thing you don't want it to be is elitist. I mean, to me, culture is not elitist, and this cannot be elitist, or it makes no sense.
You're right. It's the opposite of elitist. In fact, we say no. When we say philosophy, some people say, oh, I've been thinking of attending a Philosopher's Café, but I really don't know philosophy. Do you think I would fit in? We use the word philosophy in a way of the market philosophy and the agora, the ancient Greek idea, where you had the academy on the hill, like as we have Simon Fraser on the hill, or UBC
right.
Out on the, and then you had the philosophy of the agora, which means of the marketplace, where some of the more talented philosophers would come into the marketplace, into the malls, and into the downtown, and engage people in conversation. And this is our philosophy from the roots, philosophia, which means the love of wisdom. And everyone has wisdom and knowledge. And in fact, today, what we have perhaps is too much information and not enough wisdom.
Bombarded by information.
Yes, and here we are.
And misinformation.
And misinformation. And
More
here we
so
are,
than ever.
we're talking, this is on a television program. In a way, the Philosophers Café is an antidote to the media, where we have so many other people's opinions, and it's pre-digested and fed to us in sound bites or in pictures. And how often do people now have a chance to sit face-to-face with a group of friends or strangers that very quickly become friends, with a moderator, with a topic, in a safe environment, with no political agenda, with no action directive, with no committees afterwards, with no exams? You are sitting face-to-face with a cup of coffee, and to be able to speak to each other. This is created something wonderful in terms of conversation in the community.
I'm sure. I haven't been to one, but I must go. In fact, there's one coming up at the Vancouver Public Library this Sunday.
Yes.
And the question is, you're moderating, right? The question is the future of books in the 21st century. Do you have an expert witness, so to speak?
We have, I think, the finest in Canada, Paul Whitney, who's the city librarian, means the chief librarian for the city of Vancouver, and he's former president of the Canadian Library Association and of the British Columbia Library Association, and also works internationally on the idea on copyrights and the idea of the book. He's a wonderful spokesman and thinker for the idea of the book.
And at the end of this session, when all the thoughts are out, does anybody write down what happened or print it somewhere, blog about it? Does it continue? Because someone said the Philosophers Café is the greatest form of continuing education. But where does it go after you discuss, if you come to a conclusion, and you may not, major premise, minor premise, conclusion,
right. Yes.
then where does it go?
Well, we haven't. Part of the idea of being open and safe with the cafe is that we haven't come to a conclusion. We don't vote at the end. There are no winners or losers. What it does is it stimulates not just conversation, but also listening. And so we would love to take it to the next level, and if we'll find interested people who would do a blog in Penticton, the cafe there, they put out something they call the Penticton Papers, which I love that name. They get over 100 people a time in the Penticton area and have a wonderful gathering. And at the end of every year, they put out what the conversations were about.
Well, and to me, when great minds come together, you don't fight. It's not about fighting, but you can disagree honorably.
Yes.
And come up with new ideas. I can say to you, but Dr. Wosk, I totally don't agree with that. Here's what I think, and you can accept that, not fight with me.
As long
That's
as
the moderator's job.
That's right. It's as you said, if we're talking about ideas, then that's fine. There's only one rule that we have in the cafe, and that's that there is respect among the people. We encourage people to speak with passion, to think, you come up with ideas that are totally surprising to yourself at times. For example, on the idea of the book, the future of the book in the 21st century. I love books. They're among my best friends. But a book is a technology also. It's a way to communicate, to preserve, to treasure, to pass on. But there are other ways also. So you've got books, you've got computers. What we're doing now is part of the oral tradition, which preceded books. And then you had scrolls, and you had writing on cave walls and various things. And maybe those writings that are in stone will even last longer than the electronic media and the books that we have today. There are communications between the animals and the winds and the oceans, and all these, to me, the entire universe is a book, is a story, it's communicating, and for us to remain open. So while I love and appreciate and champion the book, it's not the only technology. It's one of an infinite number of universal means of communication.
And when I pass on, or you pass on, will our children simply have iBooks and our libraries to say, well, my mother she used to drop her paperback in the bathtub. That's why it's so messy. But we don't do that anymore because we get everything electronically.
No, I
don't think the book will go away.
No,
I can't imagine.
There'll be more books than ever, and in more forms. And for example, the candle. The candle is something that we really don't need today. We've got all the electric lights and all various forms of it. And however, there are hundreds of times more candles sold today, in the hundreds of millions of candles, because we buy them for effect, because of their beauty, because of the atmosphere, for a number of reasons like that, because of the fragrance. So candles are a type of technology that brought us light, that are obsolete, that are more popular than ever. Books will always remain because it's a type of technology that you can hold in your hand, that everything that we've used in the past will remain in one way or another.
And if there is a blackout, I have a lot of candles stashed in case, you know, the battery goes dead on the flashlight, and eventually, or the matches, we always have matches buried in the yard. Other questions from the Philosophers Café. Who comes up with the questions? How do you determine?
We leave this up to the moderators. Once we've chosen moderators who are well educated, they don't have to have doctorates. They have to. Stan Persky once mentioned, to be a successful moderator, you have to be a stand-up philosopher. But it doesn't have to be in formal philosophy, just a good general background, and then to have a vibrant personality, to be able to be more like actually a conductor of an orchestra, because there are many people you have to be watching the watch. You have to be listening on one hand to what is being said and what might be said, what was said, how to bring it together. If someone is dominating, how do you have other people do it? So you become really the conductor. In a sense, you're not playing the instrument, but you're making sure that the rhythm of the conversation is safe, is vibrant, is coherent for everyone present.
And people remain curious after, because I think curiosity drives us, and we can keep curious about the world, as you are. You are, if I may say, a gifted visionary. You just got it. I don't know if that was Morris J., your father, or your Uncle Ben, or who helped you with that, but you've always had it.
Well, my father was, as you know, was an exceptional man, and I was given every opportunity to learn, and so in my travels and different communities that I studied with, at a certain point in my life, I decided, who am I? Why am I here? How much time do I have? And it kept trying to peel back these layers, these illusions of life, and then I saw not only did I want to learn, and as you mentioned, curious, like Alice in Wonderland, things are getting curiouser and curiouser, and to really try and, as in the cafe, when we sit face to face and talk, there's also trying to be face to face with the essence of the universe. And if I can understand that as much as possible, continuously, and then to help share that with others.
So we don't live an unexamined life. But if you took a book like The Dominant Animal, for instance, which talks about what dire straits we're in, where do you start with that? It's complex.
It is, but to me it's a paradox, because every generation goes through, it's the end of the world, as we have our own mortality. Every generation has its mortality, and certainly now with technology, we have actually the potential to end the human race.
And have had for some time.
So on one hand, every generation has, like Dickens, the best. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and we have that constantly, and it's a choice we have to make. Evolution is happening, whether we're there directing it or not. There are challenges, life and death challenges, whether we respond or not. One person can make a difference. We think that, oh, history is too large for me. It's overpowering. What can I do? One person can make a tremendous difference for evil. One person can make a tremendous difference for good.
And if every person just did a little bit, the world would change. Because we're so overwhelmed, as you know, when you see an inconvenient truth, you think, well, what can I do about that? Well, I can drive a smaller car, I can recycle, and it doesn't hurt my lifestyle. So there are ways. What didn't you learn at Harvard or UBC or SFU or in one of your academic journeys about life and where we're going and bigger questions?
What didn't
you learn? You know what they don't teach you at Harvard Business School?
One of the things I did learn at these various places was I learned how to learn. And I learned how to learn not for the sake of grades. Because when you do a job and you get paid, or when you write an exam and you get a grade, you're doing it for the sake of a reward, which we all need. There's a certain level, though, when you can study for the sake of study, when you can do something for someone not because you're going to be recognized or get something in return, not because you're going to get a letter grade or an honor or something. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And once I learned to learn how to learn, then the entire world became my teacher.
And to learn how to think, as Mortimer Adler, the late Mortimer Adler suggested many times, we have to teach our children how to think.
Yes.
And the grading part, like, so you pass the exam, what does that say? Not a lot.
No, my youngest daughter, Elisheva, she's would love to start her own school someday. She's just 14 now, but she would say, you learn so much more through life experience, through field trips, and these are, today in the world of learning, there's never been a more fortunate generation where literally from that song, you've got the whole world in your hands, which we do on our laptops, on our desks, on the television. There are hundreds of ways of communicating instantaneously, but there's communicating ideas and there's communicating heart, and heart can never be communicated through technology. And this is one of the, in a sense, the antidotes by having a Philosophers Café, or one of our programs is the Academy of Independent Scholars, where people who have been left out of the academy, out of the university or post-secondary institutions, come together. Many of these people are autodidacts. That means they're self-taught. They're not just dependent upon institutions, but we try to face each other, to embrace each other, to stimulate and help each other as individuals.
There seems to be a trend in education today to allow, in some circles, to allow a young learner to follow his or her passion. Maybe you don't have to learn geometry. Maybe you just don't have to learn a theorem. Maybe you can, if you know your passion and you're 12, why not go there?
I think to a certain extent that I would support that, but not absolutely. I think we need a common story, some type of common cultural experience that we can relate to.
A discipline of sorts.
A discipline of sorts, and out of that, perhaps you could expand the electives.
Okay, on that note, you'll be expanding minds. 4 o'clock Sunday, Vancouver Public Library, with guest speaker Paul Whitney, the city librarian, about the future of books in the 21st century.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you, Fanny.
Nice to see you.
Thanks.
Dr. Yosef Wosk. And coming up, for decades, Cyril Etrog's sculptures have enlightened us and played an important role in the development of the Canadian arts. His commissions and his work are legendary, as is he. Stay with us for Cyril Etrog.